All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Thanks for staying with me through the break. That, of course, is She Lies, which I'm going to be playing as long as Hillary Clinton is still in the race. And I probably would have to continue playing even if she drops out of the race. But Elizabeth Warren was to get into the race. What are you going to do? At any rate, a little fun at the expense of the Democratic presidential contenders. And there's nothing wrong with that. Before I get into the story of the Marines and this insanity, did you guys happen to hear Hillary Clinton's white privilege speech? I'm not going to go into it right here, right now. I probably will cover it on Sunday's show a little bit more. Because it's... Unless something else crazy happens between now and the end of the week, which is always a possibility, this will undoubtedly be the outrage of the week. Again, the left attempting to politicize the Charleston church shooting. And Hillary wants to talk about the very unpleasant reality of white privilege. If you haven't heard it, look it up. You can find it online. Tell me what's wrong with this person. You can even find a link to the speech at the Tap Into the Truth Facebook page, just in case you're having trouble finding it. But a simple Google search will probably take you where you want to go, give you several options on it. All I can say is, my goodness, what is wrong with the people on the left? Why can't we just pull together? Well, because then you can't play identity politics, I suppose. At any rate, this article came from the USA Today. And it actually was from Monday. So, very amazing. Faced with a shortage of U.S. Navy ships, the United States Marine Corps is exploring a plan to deploy its forces abroad on board foreign vessels. This to ensure that they can respond quickly to global crises. I thought the word should be crises, but that's not the way it was written here. Around Europe and Western Africa. I guess that's the only place we're concerned about a crisis popping up. Well, we do have our fleet spread very thin. At any rate, the initiative is a stopgap way to deploy Marines aboard ships overseas until more American vessels are available. This according to Brigadier General Norman Cooling, who happens to be the Deputy Commander of the U.S. Marine Corps forces in Europe and Africa. The Marines will be able to respond quickly to evacuate embassies or protect U.S. property and citizens, a need highlighted by the 2012 attack in Benghazi, Libya. That, of course, killed 4 Americans, including the U.S. ambassador. It's kind of surprising they even want to mention that out loud, considering their favorite candidate running for the Democratic nomination. At any rate, quote, "There's no substitute for U.S. amphibious vessels." This is still a Brigadier. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. It doesn't happen often. But at any rate, this, according to the Brigadier, Mr. Cooling, and he also said, quote, "We're looking at other options in the meantime. The Marines have been working with Spain, Italy, the United Kingdom, and, quote, other close allies," sounds a little vague to me, to determine the suitability of the foreign ships for U.S. personnel and aircraft. The units would be designed for limited operations and not major amphibious assaults. A ground force of about 100 to 120 Marines would be deployed along with 3 or 4 Osprey, which of course fly like airplanes but can take off and land like a helicopter. Seems that the U.S. Navy has 30 amphibious ships, but says it needs 38 to fulfill war-fighting requirements. It won't reach that level until 2028 because of budget constraints, according to the Navy. Critics say that the Navy has allowed its amphibious capabilities to decline. I don't think it's so much the Navy has allowed it as much as the current Commander-in-Chief has demanded it. But, that's just me looking at the reality of the circumstances. Heaven forbid that we should expect me to write a politically correct news article, because it would not be politically correct, just FYI. Quote, allowing the continued atrophy of the Navy Marine Corps team's amphibious capabilities is simply not an option given the national security challenges facing the United States and its allies. This according to Representative Randy Forbes, a Republican from Virginia, and also a member of the Armed Services Committee. He said that in an email statement, by the way. Much of the Navy's current amphibious fleet is being used in the Pacific, where the U.S. military is attempting to respond to expansionist China, and in the Middle East, where it's responding to an, quote, endless series of crises. Wonder why they didn't mention that those are crises of the current administration's making. Don't know, just wondering out loud. At any rate, fighting in Ukraine and chaos in Libya have raised concerns about the need for forces who can respond quickly to events in Europe and Africa. The U.S. has deployed land-based forces in Spain, Italy, and elsewhere, which places them closer to the crisis in North Africa. But Marines aboard ships can usually get closer to the action and respond more quickly. Cullinan said that it would likely be more than a year before agreements could be in place to allow a regular deployment of contingents of Marines on foreign ships. In addition to the technical requirements, such as testing the ability of ships to carry U.S. aircraft and equipment, the U.S. would also have to reach agreements separately with individuals or operate under NATO authority. So this is what we've been reduced to, ladies and gentlemen. We have our Marine Corps who, despite the fact that they often get the absolute worst jobs during the military action because, they're the first ones in, and they're trying to take the hardest positions in a ground assault kind of situation. Let's face facts, that in a lot of cases, their purpose is to be cannon fodder. It's not a pleasant idea or thought, but in most cases it tends to be that. But these are U.S. American troops. They are specialists. They are trained to go in and do the tough jobs. But we don't have enough ships in our Navy any longer to adequately respond to these possible threats. According to this article, according to this report, we're actually looking at 2028 before the Navy thinks it's going to be able to build an additional 8 ships. I mean, there's no question, this administration in particular has done more to gut our military than almost any other administration in the history of the country. And I only use the qualifier almost any other because while I don't think there's any other that actually has done more, I haven't done the definitive research to tell you for a fact that that is 100% accurate. So I'm just going to say they're in the top 3. Because there's no question about that. I honestly believe they are number one on this. They very confused, this administration, on what our military is for. Also very confused about what NASA's for. Also very confused about the biggest threat we face in the world today. Also very confused about the fact that it's not gun control laws that are at issue when some crazy person uses a weapon to kill innocent people. They're just very confused. They have an agenda, and they want to take advantage of an opportunity. So in that part, they think they're smart. But it's getting so predictable now that even the useful idiots, as they would refer to you, are starting to wake up. So thank goodness for that. But in the meanwhile, we still have to face the fact that our military is being weakened on a daily basis by an administration and by a Congress that's doing nothing to fight back. So here we are, with our Marines now having to try and make agreements with foreign countries to be deployed on board their ships, because we don't have enough ships in our Navy for them to be riding along for deployment purposes. How much weaker does that make our position in the world? How much does that endanger U.S. interests? How many American citizens are endangered this very moment that are needlessly in harm's way because our amphibious Marine troops can't respond? Boys and girls, it's one of these times where we need to pay attention to this story, and we need to ask our elected officials why this has been allowed to happen in the first place, and what can be done to speed along the reemergence of our Navy. Our men and women in uniforms need and deserve our support, and that means all of our support. Unconditional, unequivocating, unquestioning. They need the tools to do the jobs we ask them to do, and we need to have their back when they're trying to do those jobs. Plain and simple. Now, I'm going to change gears again, because here's another story that I came across. I was very, very interested in this. I'm sure a lot of you have probably heard about it by now. It was making a lot of waves today. The story actually broke last week, but didn't get a whole lot of traction. At least not right away. Slowly starting to get attention. In fact, first article I saw on this came up around June 12th. But, here's the bottom line. The Obama administration is funding a provision of Obamacare, or for those of you that insist on living in denial, the Affordable Care Act. Of course, here's the problem. They're funding this provision unconstitutionally and against the decision of Congress. Now, according to Republican House member Peter Roskam, he is a Republican from Illinois. He went on Fox News' Greta Van Susteren show this past Thursday to talk about the details of his findings in an oversight investigation by the House Ways and Means Committee. Quote, "We've just learned that the administration is paying out of a tax refund account, not appropriated money, into something called the Basic Health Program, which was authorized by Obamacare to subsidize various health insurance programs, but Congress never authorized any money for it." He also went on to say that, quote, "And we have just learned over the last couple of weeks that the administration has paid out $60 million